Do you remember your very first best friend? I do. Midnight was giving birth in the closet at the end of the hall. The repeating pattern of deep growls and shrieks woke me. Kittens, I nearly shouted as I crawled down from the top bunk. My sister stirred on the bottom bed. I paused on the ladder, held my breath, hoped she wouldn't open her eyes. After a moment, she rolled onto her side and fell back into deep sleep. I was glad she didn't wake. I wanted the kitties all to myself. Midnight continued to scream. I cracked open my bedroom door and saw my parents kneeling in the hallway, peering into the closet. They noticed I was standing there and told me to get back in bed. But I want to make sure Midnight is okay, I protested. She was mine too. I should have been allowed to check on her. Dad refused to let me come out of the room. He said he would get me when it was over. Mom agreed with him. She said I was too little to watch. Too little? I was 4 years old and knew that babies came from a mommy's belly. Plus, I had been waiting forever to see the kittens. My parents weren't being fair. Please, let me? I begged. I'll be good. Mom commanded me to go back to bed. I crossed my arms and shook my head. Dad threatened to spank me. I stomped my foot and cried, thinking a tantrum would make them understand that I was right and they were wrong. Dad didn't care much for my new approach. He picked me up by the arm and carried me to my bed. He said to keep quiet or else he would take the nightlight and lock me in the dark. It's not fair. I screamed, instantly regretting it. Dad squeezed my arm so tight that I began to cry for real. When he let go, I rubbed the spot, trying to make it look worse than it really was. He told me I was punished, then pulled the nightlight from the wall. No, don't! I cried out. Ignoring my pleads, Dad went back into the hall and slammed my door shut. I heard my sister sobbing from on the lower bed. I felt bad that she had to suffer for my mistake, so I climbed down and cuddled up next to her. I told her I was sorry. She was terrified of the dark, more so than I, but eventually she relaxed and fell back to sleep while holding my hand. I couldn't rest, though. Midnight's persistent shuddering cries and gargling noises kept me from closing my eyes. I stared into the black, waiting. It felt like forever. I'm not sure how it happened, but the next thing I remember is Mom waking my sister and me. Come see, she urged. The sunlight coming through the window lit up her smile. The kittens were tiny versions of Midnight, 8 of them in total. All the same jet black color except for one. He had a speck of white fur above his nose, with white front paws to match. That one was mine. I knew the moment I saw him. Dad said we could give them names. It wasn't an easy task since they all looked the same. After several failed attempts to remember which was which, my sister decided the best thing to do was to call them Kitty Cat, but she was only 2 years old and pronounced it Key Cat. The oddball was the only exception. He was mine to name, so I named him Charlie. Charlie was more playful than the rest of the litter. Whenever my sister and I were allowed to pick them up, he would roll on his back to let us pet his belly. Sometimes he would try to suck on our fingers, mistaking them for a part of his mother. It never failed to make my sister laugh. And sometimes, when Midnight laid down in the box to feed them, he would get turned around, managing to walk away from her. Mom would pick him up, turn him in the right direction and say, "You're going the wrong way, Charlie." Eventually, the kittens opened their eyes. My sister and I were allowed to play with them without supervision, but only if we stayed in the hallway. Dad said we weren't allowed to take them out of the closet because they were still too small to run free. We didn't mind. Sitting on the floor petting them was one of our favorite things to do, especially when Midnight fed them. Charlie was turning out to be the runt. He ate well, but he never latched on to Midnight like the others did. While they loved to pat at her stomach and purr, Charlie was always too busy going the wrong way. No matter how many times we picked him up and faced him in the right direction, sooner or later, he would get turned around again. Time went on, and the kittens got bigger. They meowed whenever someone would walk down the hall, demanding us to stop and play. Sometimes they got up on their hind legs, just barely able to peek over edge of the box. One day, my sister yelled something about the kittens. Mom and I came running from the living room to see what all the fuss was about. Charlie was in the hall, on the outside of the box, trying to correct his mistake. He clawed at the cardboard, wanting to make his way back to the other side. He kept falling over, shaking himself, then trying again. It was funny. Feeling sorry for him, Mom picked him up, gave him a kiss, and sat him next to his brothers and sisters. "You went the wrong way, Charlie," she said. That was the first time Charlie broke out of jail, but not the last. He would make it over the edge, and either Midnight or Mom would grab him by the scuff of the neck, then toss him back into the box. It happened again and again. The whole family had to help keep him where he belonged. After a while, everyone got tired of dealing with his shenanigans. We officially changed his name to Wrong Way Charlie and let him have free reign of the hallway. Even Midnight stopped caring. All the other kittens were content to stay in the box, but Charlie came and went as he pleased. He never went far, though. Sometimes he would sneak a peek into my bedroom or into the bathroom, but that was the extent of his exploration. It was easy to forget that he was only a few weeks old and too frightened to venture into any of the rooms. The box and hallway was the only world that he knew, the only place he felt safe. A few days later, I woke to the sound of Grandma's voice coming from the living room. She was talking to my sister about making her a new dress. "No one told me Grandma was coming over," I thought. Excited to see her, to see if she brought me a present, I jumped out of bed and ran down the hallway. I feel this soft crunch under my foot. What was that? I turned around to see what I had stepped on. Then I screamed. Wrong Way Charlie crawled toward me. The back half of him was crushed and twisted. Horrible sounds escaped from his small mouth. Mia. I continued to scream. Charlie was still trying to crawl toward me while making that resounding, awful sputter. His body trembled and his little head twitched incessantly. Mom came running down the hall, my sister right behind her. Blood was everywhere, a trail of gore soaking into the carpet. All I heard was screaming, 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 screaming. It echoed down the hallway and throughout the years. Midnight leaped out of the closet and ran toward me. Wide-eyed, she hissed and swatted, then lapped at the blood flowing from Charlie's gaping mouth. Grandma grabbed a hold of me, held me close. My sister pressed her face into Grandma's side so she wouldn't have to see. Mom and Charlie were still screaming, still making those appalling noises. I couldn't tell them apart. "It's still alive," Mom wailed. "It's still alive." Oh my God, what do I do? Though Grandma tried to protect me, I couldn't look away. Charlie was crying in agony. The look on his little face said, "Why is this happening to me? What have I done? Make it stop. Please. Please, make it stop. You have to kill it," Grandma shouted, angry. "Put the thing out of its misery for Christ's sake." Mom ran into the living room and turned the corner. I heard a drawer in the kitchen pulled open, then slammed shut. She came running back, hammer in hand. "E-E-E-E-E-E-E-A-E-H." Mom shrieked. She pounded the hammer down on Charlie's head, over and over and over again, while Midnight attacked her, trying to protect the kitten. And yet, Charlie still crawled toward me, gurgling, "Me-I hug." Midnight kept scratching and hissing. Mom kicked her away and brought the hammer down again. After the 5th or 6th drop, Charlie finally stopped making the awful noises. Chunks of his skull and brain littered the hallway. It was hours later before I calmed down enough to understand what had happened. Mom told me that it was okay. Dad said it wasn't my fault. They said these things as they cleaned up the mess that used to be Charlie. But it wasn't okay, and it was my fault. My kitten got hurt because of me. If I hadn't been running, my Charlie would be alive. I killed him. Charlie was my first best friend, my first responsibility, and my first introduction to death. He'll always be with me. Even now, after all these years, every time I walk down a fucking hallway, I see wrong way Charlie's mangled little body crawling toward me.
Like all stories, I suppose I should start at the beginning. My name's Perry Keers. I'm 37 years old, work in education and usability. Weird combo, I know. And I like hard rock and big band jazz. I enjoy playing darts, cooperative games, and playing rounders. Oh, and I'm married. Though, I suppose I might as well not be. Sorry, I suppose that's not really the beginning at all. Let me try again. My wife, Alice, and I had been married for 5 years when the trouble started. Now, I don't believe in the supernatural per se, at least not rationally. Having studied psychology as part of my educational program, I do, however, believe in the power of the psyche to create incredibly elaborate traps for itself to get lost in. I suppose the closest thing I can come to think of the paranormal is how an otherwise seemingly healthy brain starts to put itself through impossible puzzles and challenges without having any real motivation for doing so. I want to make it perfectly clear right now that my wife had no history of mental illness, no abuse, no need to hide or compensate for things in her life, in her psyche. Hell, it took me almost a year before I ever even heard of Ripter Syndrome. Have you? I'm not surprised if you haven't. It seems it's incredibly rare and not considered an actual disease. The similarities between cases are too much like one another for it to be a coincidence, however. But once again, I suppose I'm not really starting from the beginning. Alice worked with children with learning disabilities aged 10 to 16. She was very patient and, quite honestly, put me to shame in her ability to explain things in easy-to-understand ways. She was, in my belief, also gorgeous, funny, intelligent, curious, and all in all, a very good person. I think I remember the first instance of the Ripter Syndrome rearing its ugly head. We'd been cuddling a bit on the couch on a Friday evening after dinner, watching some easy-to-digest movie or another. She got up, telling me she was going to send a couple of work emails before bed, kissed me, and walked upstairs. To my surprise, it took less than 5 minutes for her to come down again and sidle up against me. She seemed a bit perturbed by something, but I shrugged it off. Done already, hun? No, I think the computer's broken. There's something weird going on with the screen. A big line or tear or something straight across. I groaned in my mind. A broken monitor, while not a huge expense, is still annoying as hell, especially considering it wasn't that old. I didn't think any more of it until the next morning. I got up first, as I usually do, letting her sleep in. Figuring to get a head start, I went and turned on the stationery in our joint workroom to see if I could see what's wrong and how big an issue it was. Considering Alice got no work done, I figured it was big, but fiddle as I might, I couldn't find anything wrong with it. Chalking it up to a graphics glitch or similar, I made a mental note of cleaning the inside of the chassis and went to make breakfast. Apparently, the effects of Ripter Syndrome are compounded over time, so it starts out slow, then accelerates exponentially. The next incident, if you can even call it that, didn't happen until, 4 months later? We were once again on the couch, cuddling and watching a movie. She's got her arm up behind my back, absently playing with the hair on the back of my head. She often does this, and I love it, but this time, after fiddling around a bit, she would repeat the same motion. A downward stroke with 2 fingers, then a swipe, right-left, then left-right, as if covering up the downward stroke. Rinse and repeat. At first I didn't react to it, but after she'd been doing it for a good 10 or 15 minutes, I got curious. Hon, why are you combing the same spot over and over? What do you mean? She looked at me in askance, apparently not understanding the question. Well, you've been sort of combing over the same spot on the back of my head for about a quarter of an hour now. Do I have something in my hair? Oh, no. I think you have like a straight patch where you're losing a bit of hair. Straight patch? Yeah, like a line. Untangling myself from her, I felt around on the back of my head, but couldn't find any area where the hair was thinner. You sure? Yeah, she said, touching me on the back of the head again. A pause, a bit of fiddling, then, I can't feel it anymore. I must have imagined it. Yeah, I suppose. It struck me as weird, but hell, we're entitled to that, aren't we? Next time was a couple of months later, after which things started accelerating. I came home early one day to see her at the dinner table, dejectedly looking down into what looked like a barely touched lunch. At first, she didn't react when I called out to her, so I went up to her, gave her a hug and a kiss, and asked what was wrong. Oh, hey, Perry. Nothing, I went down to the bookstore to return that book I bought last week because it was damaged during printing or something, and the clerk told me I was just imagining things and that there was nothing wrong. I pointed it out to her, and she started telling me I was nuts and that this was my problem. I asked to talk to her manager about it, and she started calling me crazy and foul things and to get out of the store. It was just so sudden it completely killed my mood. The kids are out for a sports date today, so I went home early. I spoke gently to her as I hugged her again, nuzzling her wonderful curly chestnut hair. It's okay, hon. Try not to let it get to you. People like that are horrible, and they're just trying to drag you down with them. Tell you what, why don't we go to the movies tonight, eat out, and just forget about this, and I'll take it down to the store first thing Monday. She smiled then, that lovely warm smile, and kissed me. I think that was the last time I saw that smile as it should be. Come Monday, I went down to the store intending to, to be honest, I went there intending to start trouble. You don't yell at my wife and get away with it, not my gentle, loving Alice. Turns out, the clerk at the store and her manager had a different story to tell. They told me Alice had come in complaining that there was a crease or tear in the book that must have happened during printing and demanded a new book. The clerk, per procedure, checked the book before intending to dispose of it, but was confused when she couldn't find anything wrong with it. Asking my wife about it, Alice had told the clerk that it's right there, page 32 to 84. So naturally, I opened the book myself and, I hadn't actually checked it before. But flipping through the pages, I couldn't find a single thing wrong with it. The clerk's manager continued the story, saying that when the clerk prompted Alice, my wife had gotten angry and raised her voice, causing the manager to come over. Alice had told them that they were swindlers and that the book was obviously defective and that they just wouldn't take responsibility. The argument had devolved from there, Alice insisting that the pages were somehow torn or marked and them denying it. Eventually, the manager had lost it and told Alice she was crazy and to leave the store. She seemed remorseful about it, and I wasn't too happy with it. But seeing as how there wasn't anything wrong with the book, I asked them if they would replace it for me, just to settle my wife's mind and mine, and the manager agreed. I think she just wanted to put it behind her. So did I. As it turns out, that was a futile hope. After this, I forget in which order things happened. All I can say is, things started getting worse. She threw away a store-bought salad when we were out walking, because someone had obviously dug around in it, looking for something in the middle. I came home one day to half the lawn being mowed, so deep there was almost no grass left. Alice said there was a furrow in the grass that looked horrible, so she cut until the grass was of equal length so it wouldn't look weird. I got an ominous feeling after that, compounded by several other small but significant events, always with the tears, furrows, lines, and rips. About 2 years after the first event, things started getting really bad. I came home to the house smelling of smoke and went upstairs to find Alice having ironed a shirt so hard she'd burned her way through it and into the ironing board beneath. She didn't seem to realize the damage she was doing and insisted she was just trying to iron out a stubborn crease. Later that same week, the police brought her home. The story they told me was that she'd been chucking books at the manager down at the bookstore, claiming they were all faulty and torn. The manager, recognizing my wife, had told the police she wouldn't press charges if I agreed to get her some help. What else could I do? but she resisted efforts to get better, claiming she was fine, that it was somehow just a big conspiracy against her, trying to cover up the imperfections and mistakes all over the world, people ruining things like our lawn to try and get to her. About a week after the book incident, I came to her, having wrecked her laptop, our stationary computer, and the SmartPad, claiming they had pixelated grooves in them. Another week with lots of small events, all with the same fixation, and I come home to the police ringing on the door again, this time without my wife. Turns out she'd tried ironing out a crease in the suit jacket belonging to a father of one of her students while he was wearing it with a baseball bat. Apparently, he hadn't gotten badly hurt, just some bruises, but she'd been taken into an emergency psych ward, raving about people's blindness to the tears and grooves everywhere. When I got there, they wouldn't let me see her, saying she was violent. I stayed outside all night, but come morning I forced myself to go home and get some rest. I don't think I slept for more than 2 or 3 hours, but when I woke up and called, they transferred her to a high-security psych ward for psychotic and violent behavior. I drove there and they let me see her for a short while. At first she was calm, expressing concern for the state of my clothes and hair and saying I should get some sleep. She quickly got herself worked up talking about everyday things, however, and soon she was screaming at me, accusing me of abandoning her and refusing to see what she sees, that I was just a cog in the great conspiracy against her and those like her. In the end, they had to sedate her and drag her away. That was the last time I saw her. She wouldn't let me see her anymore after that. But the last thing she said got me thinking, others like her. So I started doing research on the symptoms, and after about a week, I came across something called the Ripter Syndrome. Apparently, people suffering from Ripter are somehow trapped in a mind maze wherein they start seeing flaws in things. It's not really flaws per se, as some people see everything as broken or imperfect. People suffering from the Ripter Syndrome keep seeing jagged or straight tears, often beginning in books, texts, or artwork with repeating patterns. As if hidden in the information of letters, there's a rip in what should be and what is. I can't exactly explain it since I've never suffered from it myself, but that's supposedly what it is. Ripter gets progressively worse until the people suffering from it start seeing these things everywhere. Always in something though. It's not just overlaid over their entire environment. They fixate on small things. A supposed crease, a tear, a furrow, a groove, a shallow indentation, always in the form of an uneven-edged tear or line. Supposedly, it often happens to people with no history or predilection for mental health issues. And as I said before, it apparently starts small, then gets progressively worse over time until they become violent and paranoid. Apparently, from what little I've been able to gather, there's been no cases of people getting better. They've had to be hospitalized for the rest of their lives. I haven't seen my wife since then, more than 2 years ago now. I never divorced her, and I haven't dated since. My life moves on, but I just can't forget that fixated mania, the preoccupation with rips and information. It just seems too bizarre. The weirdest thing about Ripter Syndrome is that there's no mention of it existing prior to the digital age, which is why saying that the people suffering from it are hospitalized for the rest of their lives may be a bit premature. It also seems that almost all of the cases have never heard of others suffering from the disease or read about it, but they still tend to refer to themselves as one of many. That may just be the paranoid psychosis talking, but it just makes me wonder, what the hell causes a healthy mind to develop such a weird fixation? Could you really tell yourself if it happened to you? I guess this isn't really very paranormal or supernatural in any way. I just wanted to share my story about how a loving, caring woman turned into a paranoid psychotic for seemingly no reason. I mourn her, though she's still alive, and I wish I could help both her and others like her. But the mind is a devious thing, inventing ideas and seeing patterns where there are none. I wonder what a rip in text, not a page, text, would even look like.